Peace, family, friends, and lovers out there. I hope everyone is doing great. We are just getting past the first third of April. So let's jump right into what's going on, what's happening, and where we're going, right? So the first thing I want to say is it's been a very aggressive week, right? Energy's been up, flaring, a lot of arguments, a lot of tension has surfaced, fights have broke out, flight have broke out, right? Everything is now up in the air. So what do we do and how do we move from here, right? So I want to say that you got to find your happiness. And when I say you got to find your happiness, that means you have to go within and find your being. That being. The being, that self being will allow you to tap into the affinity of happiness, because whatever happens now is going to try to steal your happiness from you, right? This happiness is what we're going to use to get through all the pains and suffering that life might bring us. But if we can't even have a relationship with our being, then we will never understand the source of our happiness, right? And I want to say the source of our happiness because everything we receive from the being is in a blissfulness energy, which that leads to being the source of happiness. And I'm just going to say that you have to find yourself talking to yourself in a way to where not only do you receive messages from yourself, you give yourself messages. And I said you give yourself messages because there's certain words that you can say that creates a sound. And then that sound triggers off the message to your higher self or to the other consciousness that you have. And it allows everything to come to the present moment, right? And that's very important. And sound will lead you to your conscious mind, and your conscious mind will then move towards your present self. So when we're dealing with this happiness from within, we have to understand that we need to give and receive messages to ourselves. And we have our past self, and then we have our self that deals with our desires and our ego, right? And when you're dealing with your past self, I want to refer to that as being our conscious self. Because when you're conscious, you're just aware of what has come, what has arrived already, what has already been manifest. It's not actually what's happening in the present moment. It's not actually the present mind. So to be conscious is to be your past self, right? And when you're receiving signals and thoughts from your subconscious, now that's your ego and your desires that you have within that is being shared to your present mind. And so now your present mind is not battling when you're in the present state of being. It's never battling, but it's able to take all thoughts and bring into the present moment to realign that present self to be effective. And I say be effective to be the peace government. And I say the peace government because we're going to talk about that a little bit, because we have to be our own government for our peace, right? We have to fight for our peace, and if you're not doing that, you're going to learn that you're going on in life. You're going to have to fight for peace, your peace, because there's so many distractions, there's so much chaos, and until you can block that out and find your safe haven and find your peace, then you're just going to be amongst it and within it and be fighting and struggling, right? When you could be in flight or be in harmony from within. And that's all dealing with your government, your peace government. And your peace government is going to be what I say is unity through silence. Unity through silence makes you the administrator of power. you now deal with the power that you create from within, right? And we all have been given the capabilities of administrating our own power. So we get to this point when we unite with silence. And once we get to the moment where we can unite with silence, we become the ruler of our universe. We become the administrator of the universe. We have the networks and connections to everything in the universe to co-create with, right? And we understand these things. But now, not only do you have to understand them, you have to apply them if you want to live your life from within out. Because that's the way we're meant to be. Our beings is from within and express out, right? But don't get confused, right? Don't get confused that what you express out rules the universe or should have any rulership over anything. It's not your creativity that gives you any authority of any source in this life experience, but it is your presence, right? It's the presence of the Zen. It's the presence of your potential that gives you the full awareness of the nothingness that you're able to create with. And I say nothingness because we know the wholeness comes from nothingness, right? And when we understand our self-intelligence, then our conscious mind is now in its nature. It's in its natural being. And that's where the supreme being, the supreme spiritual being becomes. And we're going to get into that later on. But right now, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the suffering and the pains that we get to have to deal with in life will create some level of happiness once we are able to identify them, to face them, to accept them, and to move forward, right? And it's something that it's a process. And we'll break down that process a little bit more in this video, but I think it's more to focus on that, yes, our suffering in life and our pains do create some level of happiness.
Get money and choose a profession. Ain't nobody got life figured out, but niggas tell lies and niggas be messy. I've been chasing the art of perfection. That shit on me feeling so less than. I was scrolling on threads, trying to take chances. Somehow I made a connection. Introducing the bread and the butter. Run up the stream like bears in the summer do. Out here trying to encourage the younger gen. Bitch, I let it come straight from the frontal lobe. I remember doing poetry, Poetry do something for an old soul. Gotta give it to Zabe, cause Zabe took me to my very first show. Put so much in my art that you gotta notice. All this money come in hard not to blow it. I don't worry my brain or the paper rolling. Try to stay stoic, but my heart be showing. It's a killer game, got the blade poking. I was scrolling on threads. It was me and a voice in my head, trying to find me and know it should be, and get us a check.
Jump right back into the conversation, okay? So we were talking about suffering and the energy that we feel, or the energy we have to deal with when we're going through a certain suffering, is really have to be identified with the pain that we're actually having in the present moment, right? Because each suffering that we go through, it has a different pain, right? It's not always a physical suffering that we might be going through. We might be going through a suffering where it's dealing more with our emotions. and more of a mental state of us, right? So we have to learn how to agree, yes, we all do suffer in life, right? But during this suffering, how do we balance the suffering within the rest of our lives, right? With everything else that we have going in our lives, because we don't have to suffer in all areas of life because of some situation that has brought a physical pain or an emotional pain, right? So let's identify what is causing the suffering. Because when we can identify what is causing the suffering, then we can address the pain, right? So if we're dealing with a physical pain, then the suffering needs time. The time will heal the pain, right? If it's a physical suffering. But if we're dealing with an emotional suffering, time does not heal the wound or the suffering that the individual is going through. So we can't expect time to pass by and expect to get over our emotional suffering that we're going through. So I want to say, if you're going through a lot of emotional suffering, how to use this energy that we have always around us, but we have to choose this energy to be around us first. But once we do make this decision to have this energy around us, then this energy can deal with the suffering in the present moment of the emotional body, of the emotional suffering. And I want to say harmony. Harmony is the energy that you should use while you're dealing with any type of suffering. But how do you find yourself using harmony if you're not in a space mentally, physically, or emotionally to invite harmony into your doorstep? Because this is something you're going to have to open up to. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm in this great mood, I'm in this great state, my being is very happy, because that's not the state of the present moment. Your present moment is dealing with some type of suffering, some type of pain, and it's distracting you from the present moment of life, which is totally okay because we all suffer and we all have to deal with our own pains in life. So I'm not saying anything about you should just shrug off your suffering or shrug off your pain with some other energy or with some other way of doing it. I'm just saying, while in the present moment, if you need to balance some of the suffering that you're dealing with, you can use harmony to do that. And I say harmony is because when you find yourself in a space that you create, that you can be at peace with your suffering, then that allows the suffering to take action. And I say take action is because when you're suffering, it's trying to make you feel a certain way. And if you're not able to feel that way at that particular moment, in that present moment, it's only going to intensify the suffering, because whatever the cause of the suffering is not there to relieve it or to resolve it. You have to now wait to get a chance to resolve or to relieve the suffering, but you might not feel you have the chance because of the situation that took place that caused the suffering. So with all that said, how do you find a time and a space to use this harmony to balance out the suffering? Well, not only do you need to find the space and find the time, you also have to find the others that will allow you to be in harmony and will also share their energy with you so that you can stay in harmony, right? Because this is not an individual thing, right? To get through your suffering is not an individual thing. This is something that's done collectively with the energies that you bring together. So you have to understand, if you want things to be in harmony, you have to set these things up with the space, with the time you give yourself, and with the people that you're going to have around you in this particular present moment, right? So, how strong are your pains is another question you have to ask yourself. Because if your pains are very strong and intense, then you need to stop all things and focus on this pain. You don't need to continue on with life and trying to move through life with this pain, because it's only going to cause more friction, more tension throughout your aura field, and a lot of things won't be able to attract the energy and the harmony that you're going to need to even balance out this cycle of pain that you're going to be dealing with, right? You have to understand that once you are aware of what is taking place, you now have to take time to allow that to clear. And I say clear for you to deal with it, for you to go back and forth and sit down with yourself and reflect with yourself, and then maybe even get feedback from other sources in other ways, and then take accountability for everything that's been heard and said, and see where you can move from that point, right? There's a lot of things in the process that you have to do is going to be something that you have to be very patient with yourself. And so a lot of us don't get a chance to get to this point, because when we're suffering and we feel the intensity of the suffering in the present moment, we turn right to something that can relieve us from the suffering in that present moment. It might be a drug, it might be a substance, it might be alcohol, it might be food, it might be anything that you become addicted to that will relieve you from that suffering in the present moment. And that is something that you have to watch, because you're not going to find the level of pain that you're on by using substance and alcohol and other things to remove the suffering for that present moment. It's not really the solution. I'm not saying don't do it, or it's bad that you're doing it, or stop. What I'm saying is this method of using harmony to balance out the suffering is a much more efficient way that yourself can manage the suffering as it occurs. Because you're the only one that really knows when you're suffering. Others can feel it and see it, but they don't know if it's causing pain, where the suffering is coming from. Is it something that you're dealing with? Is it something that you're using addiction to get with? We don't really know what could be your solution for the present moment, but understand that we can see when we come around and we bring our presence of harmony and want to see you be relieved of the suffering, that you accept it and you be able to be welcome to share your suffering, not only with us or with me or with others, but just to be able to see that by sharing, you're now in a space that harmony can be received in return. Because if you share something with someone, then you can receive something back from someone. And if that someone is understandable and know that harmony and the energy of harmony will lead you down the line to dealing with your pains, then yes, they will be there and create a space where you feel that you can not only accept it and be accountable, but now move forward. And I say move forward because when you spend time in the present moment, you understand that you allow things to come together, right? And as things come together in the present moment, you take what you have and you take what you are being faced with, and you're able to bring it together all in that present moment to move forward. And when you accept this, it's much easier than avoiding it, right? Avoiding the present moment is only going to prolong your suffering to end. Your suffering will end in the present moment, but you have to get there in the present moment and use all that energy to move forward. and I'm going to try to say this as clear as possible, but your suffering is to help you move forward in life. But it's the way that you balance it that you're able to move forward and not remain stuck with the pains from the suffering, right? Can you get past the pain and move into some type of happiness is my next question. Because if you can go through life and take your sufferings, identify them to what you're feeling and address your pains and take your pains that you have in life and get happiness from that, is that an actual process that you're willing to take and do? Because to me and myself, I understand that everything that I have to deal with, I have within me to deal with it with. So my happiness will deal with the pains and suffering, but how do I get to my happiness if I'm dealing with the pains and suffering? And so in my equation, that you have to deal with the pain and suffering to equal up to the happiness. And the next question has to be then, is there levels to happiness? Because how can you take pain and suffering and be happy? Well, because there's levels to happiness, right? And there's levels to happiness, and you know this because each time you get what you want and more of what you want, you feel more than what you were feeling a minute ago or before you had received what you just had. I'm not going to say you're happier, but you are feeling more of a happiness. So if you're feeling more of something, then it has to be another level, it has to be above what you were just feeling, right? So yes, there's levels to happiness. And then we have to watch out why we become happy, because you don't want to set the wrong intentions, and those intentions do something to harm someone else, and now you're happy because of some type of feeling you got from what you did, and that is something we call revenge. And with that said, I want to say, family, friends, loved ones out there, stay prayed up, pray for protection, pray for safetyness for all those that you know and could think of, right? Because this is serious times where everyone needs a little bit of emotional support, everyone needs a little mental support, everyone needs a little physical support. And if you can do that from your space, and then you are doing that more often, then yes, it is reaching others and it is helping others. And with that said, Rafiki Angu, Ashe.